He may be the eldest of our elder statesmen. Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, is turning 100.
Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger is out with a new book, Leadership, 6 Studies in World Strategy. At the age of 99, he's still active on the world stage. I began by asking about how leaders are made.
I sat down with a 99-year-old veteran diplomat in his New York City office yesterday to discuss the Ukraine war, the state of global politics, and much more.
It's funny because I had heard right after that piece came out from mutual acquaintances that Henry Kissinger was making comments about the piece. So of course I called and said, hey, I'd love to hear directly what you're thinking about.
And incredibly, he remains relevant on a global scale. If you had one of your aides here pick up the phone and call Beijing and say, Dr. Kissinger would like to speak with President Xi, would he take your call?
There's a good chance that he'd take my call, yes.
In anyone else, the arrogance would be staggering, but the nimbus of photographs surrounding Kissinger and displaying the former U.S. presidents, living and dead, whom he has served or advised, is compelling. Confirmation of the old adage, if you can do it, it ain't bragging.
My encounter with him as a much younger person is when I was the editor of the Lefty campus newspaper, and he was the professor going to work for Nixon. So we
literally in '68.
Yeah, 68 and '69. Yeah, so this was we started off on the wrong foot, but I've come to admire his statesmanship.
I've been a member of this committee for many years, and I have never seen anything as disgraceful and outrageous and despicable as the last demonstration that just took place about, you're going to have to shut up or I'm going to have you arrested.
One other thing that motivates him is a relentless desire to convince you that he's right, that his record, properly understood, is that he behaved well and he defended American interests well and he was not responsible for the perfidious things that his critics claim he's responsible for.
Get out of here, you low-life scum. So, Henry, I hope you will, Dr. Kissinger, I hope on behalf of all of the members of this committee on both sides of the aisle, in fact, from all of my colleagues, I'd like to apologize for allowing such disgraceful behavior towards a man who served his country with the greatest distinction.
He wrote in his 2001 book, A Cook's Tour, quote, "Once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands. You'll never again be able to open a newspaper and read about that treacherous, prevaricating, murderous scumbag sitting down for a nice chat with Charlie Rose or attending some black tie affair with a new glossy magazine without choking. Witness what Henry did in Cambodia, the fruits of his genius for statesmanship, and you'll never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague next to Milosevic."
Wow.
That was Anthony Bourdain.
Wow.
Tom Johnson mentioned your commitment to the peace process and the fact that you, in 1973, along with your North Vietnamese counterpart, Le Duc Tho, won the Nobel Peace Prize. There are many who allege that you are a war criminal due to the systematic carpet bombing of Laos and Cambodia. Why was that bombing necessary to our strategy in winning the war?
Let us look, what was the situation?
Sure.
First, there was no carpet bombing, so that is absolutely not true. Nixon ordered an attack on the base areas within 5 miles of the Vietnamese border that were essentially unpopulated.
Kissinger has some really remarkable lines, and what's important about them is not just that he produced them and that they led to actions implementing them, but that there's no reaction to it among the intellectual classes. So, for example, at one point in must be 1971, he calmly transmitted orders from probably half-drunk Richard Nixon to the U.S. Army and Air Force referring to Cambodia. And the orders were anything that flies against anything that moves in rural Cambodia. It's pretty hard to find in the archival record any statement advocating genocide at that level of clarity and explicitness. And those orders were carried out.
What I always said about Kissinger publicly and again is that when people have to count, they can't sleep and they count sheep, I think Kissinger has to count burned and maimed Cambodian and Vietnamese babies the rest of his life. But of course he doesn't.
Because of what he was in charge of.
Oh my God, not just Cambodia, in Vietnam. You tell me where it is. I mean, come on. I mean, we're talking about this is, in any other society, he would be in the dock. He'd be right there. He's absolutely right, in The Hague with Milosevic. War crimes.